What's going on, guys? Today we're under a 2001 F350 dual rear wheel. It's got the Dana 80 axle in it, and as you can see, it's got a pretty hefty rear pinion seal leak. We're going to change the rear pinion seal, and I like to, anytime I have a rear pinion seal leak, I like to go through the U-joints and make sure they're tight. Kind of wiggle it all around both directions, make sure you have no movement, because a bad U-joint will cause a vibration and eat that rear pinion seal. So as you can see, this one's tight. However, the problem we found with this one is it's got a bad carrier bearing. As you can see, I felt it as soon as I got in this vehicle, put it in reverse. I knew something was going to be bad, and that U-joint's good. So you're going to start off by marking everything to keep everything in line. As you can see, I've got everything marked where everything stays back in line so that this thing stays balanced. You know, there's rust build up all over this thing, and I want to keep all that stuff in balance. So one other thing I do want to mention is I always check the vent as well, which I haven't actually checked it on this one yet. We'll get to that later. I check the vent and make sure the vent isn't clogged up so that it's not building up excess pressure inside the differential housing and blowing that seal out. So I've already removed my 8mm bolts right here for the U-joint straps. I used an extension, my Craftsman swivel, and an 8mm socket. And I've also already removed them from here. And we're going to get this rear part of the drive shaft knocked out. We'll just knock these straps out. It will collapse. It will collapse right here, and we'll be able to pull this thing out. I'm gonna go ahead and get it out, and we'll see y'all in a minute. All right, we got our drive shaft off, and I know I'm gonna get hit in every single direction on doing this about the crush sleeve / crush washer on this, which keeps the pinion bearing preloads correct. But I've done this many a times. I've never had any problems. I've never had any rear ends, you know, have gear problems afterwards. Is what I do is one mark on each side, mark the yoke, the nut, and the pinion. And also, this is I think it's an 1 7/8" socket. We're gonna line it up with our mark on there, and we're gonna count how many turns out. And then when we put it back in, we're gonna put it in the same exact spot, and then maybe just a hair more if we're strong enough. I am going to use this vehicle's full of rust underneath it. Already had some trouble. I made sure I sprayed it with some penetrating oil. I use Schaefer's Pentro 90. Schaefer's, if y'all want to send me some Pentro 90, it blows PB Blaster out of the water. So I use that, and I'm gonna, hopefully my big electric impact will get it. If not, I got something that will. Something I forgot to mention to y'all is make sure y'all put the parking brake on, because for one, when you're under it, you know, safety reasons, but also when you go to turning this, you're gonna need that gear to hold itself still. So we're going to try to get this thing busted loose. I just use the impact to bust it loose free. And keep an eye on your marks. Make sure you don't zip that thing right on off and you lose your count. And then after I get it busted loose, I will use a ratchet to get it out of its final. Also, that impact will it'll put a bunch of abuse on the bearings. So I try not to use the impact that much on this kind of stuff. All right, we was able to get it busted off. The impact busted it right off. I did one turn on the impact, then I came back with my 1/2-inch ratchet, counted my turns, and I'm at 13.5 turns. So that was 13, and you make it to a half and it'll come off of there. So now I know when I go to put it back on, I start it right there, get to my mark, I can't pull it off. Now I can start counting. 1. When I get to 13, we're gonna stop it, and that'll put that same amount of preload back onto the pinion bearings. The impact also, the other reason you don't want to just spin this thing right on off is because this is a lock nut, and you still want it to be a lock nut when you go to put it back on. We'll use red Loctite as well, just to be sure, but people tell you not to reuse these as well. But as long as it's still nice and tight when I'm backing it out, I'll reuse it with some red Loctite. So I'm gonna see if we gotta have a puller to get this off or if it'll come off. Let's see. Some of them, oh, we're gonna have to get a puller. So I'll get my puller out and we'll get this yoke off of here. All right, we've got our yoke off, and I used a big flathead screwdriver and a hammer and just kind of beat a hole in that thing, and then I'm just gonna pry it right on out. I don't think there'll be much to it. Let me see if I can set y'all up. Here it is. Just take that screwdriver, run it all the way around and flatten it out. And let me get a pan so we don't make a mess, but that's how you get the seal out. So we'll move on over to the carrier bearing, and I haven't got the new parts yet, mainly because it looks like they have 3 different carrier bearings for different transmission and wheelbases. So I wanted to go ahead and get this carrier bearing out, and while I'm at it, just get the seal out, just in case. You know how them parts house guys are. They like to give you the wrong stuff. So let me get a pan and we'll get this off, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll move on to the carrier bearing. All right, guys, I got the front part of the drive shaft out. This nut right here that holds that yoke on is a 1 5/16" or 34 millimeter, and I had to heat it up to get it to bust loose, along with a bunch of penetrating oil because it was so rusty. And then I used my puller, same thing as the rear. I used my puller to pull the, I can't find my this should really have a pointed tip right there, but I can't find it. Pull the yoke off. I'm gonna have to cut some of this rubber. These bolts up here are a 12 millimeter 12 point, and I used some wrenches to get them off. Really couldn't get in there with a socket, and also a ratchet wrench. Once I got it broke loose, they were pretty rusted and tight, hard to get loose as well. So I'll get back with y'all, figure out what we're gonna do on getting this off. I think I'm just gonna cut some of this rubber off and try to get in there with my puller. I may have to heat it up as well. So we'll get back to y'all. All right, cut out this piece, and then if you take a razor blade and cut all along here, you can, this piece will come right off. That way you can heat this thing up, and you're not smoking up and breathing in all that cancer. and also you can come in here and get a better grip on something if the puller can catch it. I'm not quite sure if the puller is going to catch it or not. We may have to heat it up and beat it off. All right, we're back out here. We're running around town today, finding the correct parts. If this is a Dana M80 rear end, and it's national. This is the Pinion seal 710577. Before you go tear your truck apart, I'd make sure somebody has this seal local, because I ran all around today. Finally found one about 20 miles away at O'Reilly's. Napa, Advanced Auto, AutoZone, the semi-truck stores, nobody had one in stock. Finally found one at O'Reilly's about 25 miles away, which is a warehouse type O'Reilly's. So on the drive shaft support / carrier bearing, whatever you want to call it, I found a piece of 1.5" tubing, not pipe, but tubing. And you want it to fit just inside this lip right here. Let me get the old one and you'll be able to tell. So you don't want to push on any of this. You don't want to push on any of the rubber. You want to push on this piece in here. And this piece of 1.5" tubing fits in there perfect. And we'll push on just that bearing. And it slides up in this shaft. So 1.5" tubing, and we're going to beat that on there. And I'll get back with you. There's no orientation on this, so you can't put it on wrong. Just make sure you don't put it on upside down. Make sure it goes on this way. Just kidding. I'll get back to y'all as we're beating it in. All right. So this thing went right on in. It didn't take a very big hammer. You don't want to beat on it too hard on like a real solid surface. You'll tear that U-joint up, but this thing goes right on. It don't take much. So we got it in there. It sounds nice and solid now. So that's it. All right, I got my yoke all cleaned up. Like I said in some of my past videos, you wanna do it this way. When you clean that up with Scotch-Brite, don't do it this way. Always with the direction of the way it's riding on that seal. That way, if it does scratch it up or whatever, that seal, it's going with the seal, not against it. Another thing I forgot to mention is I always clean these splines up with brake cleaner, and I apply RTV. I use the right stuff in here because oil will also leak through these splines right here. So always clean it up with brake cleaner and apply a little RTV on your splines. That way gear oil can't leak through and through the pinion nut. Something that doesn't take that much effort to ensure you get a good dry seal. All right, we got our pinion seal on. Got everything cleaned up. We've already cleaned up that with brake cleaner, the splines. We cleaned up the inside of this with our Scotch-Brite. We cleaned up the yoke with our Scotch-Brite. And when I say little taps all the way around, if you have to watch it. I got this one first time. It didn't get started crooked on me. If it gets crooked, I wouldn't even try to straighten it up opposite of the crooked part. I would just pull out, start over again. It's very easy to destroy this seal. This is a $50 seal. You don't want to mess it up. So all the way around, very slowly, just a little bit at a time, nice and even, and you can get it on there no problem, without having to use a big seal tool. All right, so we got our yoke cleaned up. Don't forget your little spacer that's in here. Oh, sorry, I already put it up in here. There's a little washer, oil splash washer. I've already cleaned this up. Gonna put some RTV on these splines, then we're gonna start our nut. We're gonna put some red Loctite on our nut, our pinion nut. All right, the nut's on there. It was every bit we could do just to get it back to 13 turns, so we're good there. All of our marks line up. Our new seal's in there. I've kind of cleaned it up just a little bit. That way you can tell if it goes to start leaking again. And now we're gonna focus on getting our carrier support back on. We've already got it all built. We're gonna put Loctite on those nuts, bolts down there, and we'll also put Loctite on this one up here with that yoke once we get it back on in place. All right. What's up, guys? Gonna close this video out. I'm fixing to top off the rear end fluid. We went ahead and did a change, fluid change. So we pulled the cover off, 14mm bolts all the way around. There's no gasket on this application. Just a RTV. I use the right stuff, that way I don't have to wait so long to go ahead and top it off with fluid. It calls for limited slip 75/90 synthetic. We bought the gear fluid with the limited slip already in it from Valvoline, and it holds about 3.5 quarts. So I bought 4 quarts. We're gonna top it off. We're gonna run this thing up and down the road. We got our drive shaft back in. We lined all of our marks back up. Loctite on everything, so we don't have to worry about nothing going off, with the exception of the U-joint straps. We didn't Loctite them. After we get this fluid in it, we're gonna run it up and down the road, make sure there's no vibration like there was before. The carrier bearing definitely wiped out the pinion seal on this thing, so we changed the pinion seal and the carrier bearing, or drive shaft support bearing, the middle of the drive shaft. So all right, guys, we'll see y'all on the next one.